Hi, everybody, and welcome to another lesson in Tanya. We have concluded the first 25 chapters of Tanya. Chapter 26 begins on a whole different discussion and the same path of serving God. Just an introduction to the topic. In the next 9 chapters, with one chapter's exception, chapter 32, but the next 9 chapters, the Rebbe is going to be dealing with joy, happiness, how vital it is to the service of God. We have discovered thus far that there are two souls. Each soul possesses 10 powers and 3 garments. The godly soul, the animal soul, are fighting each other with their garments and with their powers, the 10 powers. We also discovered there are 3 categories of humans. You have the righteous, who is victorious. You have the wicked, who is a loser, he gives in. And you have the Beinoni, who never gives up. However, the battle is not won. He continuously fights. It is a war that he will face every day of his life. This is the third category, the Beinoni, the middle one. And this is where we should strive to reach to. The rabbi begins by telling us in the next 3 chapters, the rabbi will speak about the idea that in order for us to serve God, it is an absolute necessity to be happy. It will teach us that joy, happiness, is not watching comedy. It's not reading humorous books. It's not about contemplating unhappy events, but it starts in the head, in the mind. The mindset will make a person happy or not. In today's day and age, unfortunately, more so than generations ago, when I was a child, happiness wasn't such a difficult to come by. But apparently, some people needed the help of Tanya. Today, it is absolutely necessary. Antidepressant, over-the-counter medicine has soared. In addition, it's the single most consumed category of medication because people are unhappy. You would think that materialism, freedom, and the ability to live a life that our ancestors can only dream about will make us a lot happier. Yet, suicide rate is higher among teenagers. It's never been so high. Same is about other ailments of our society. People are depressed. People are very sad. And one can ask, how come? You have a smartphone. It's very easy to buy a car. You put it on installments. Even if you don't have money, the government is supporting today with different programs. Yet people are extremely, extremely unhappy. We will discover soon we're going to develop it, how vital it is to begin to start to serve God and the purpose that which we were created for. So the rabbi is going to devote 9 chapters, which is an enormous number of text, to the idea of joy. From now, for the next 9 chapters, with one chapter 32 in the middle, which would talk about how lucky are we as a family. But other than that, it's all about joy. The rabbi is going to divide the 9 chapters into 3 parts, just like somebody says it's like a melody. How important joy is and why should we be happy? Then the rabbi is going to talk about sadness and bitterness, melancholy, depression, Is it necessary? Is there any benefit whatsoever to it? And finally, the last part would be, again, about joy. But joy, the coming back to joy, would be joy after sadness, after depression. There is a different type of joy than the first joy that we were talking about. Chapter 26 is an introduction, will encompass all three within it, because it introduces the next 9 chapters. So the rabbi is going to give us a taste of the true joy, the purpose of bitterness and sadness, if there is any benefit to it, and what happened after we have gone through a period of sadness. As we will discover about the Jewish calendar, which we see there are not always happiness. In our lifetime, there is moments of sadness. There are tragedies. There are events that take place that beyond our control, that impossible to keep happiness. Why does that happen? Why is it part of our life? A story. There was a man that was always sad, and his wife and children kept nudging him to be happier. After all, he has a lovely wife and children. Why? One day he sat down and contemplated and came out with the conclusion that his hat, the hat he wears, is all dirty and wrinkled. If he goes and buys a new hat, people will treat him differently, and they would be kinder and be happy to socialize with him, and that will make him happy. So he goes to the hat store. He looks for a very nice hat. He tells the store owner, I want the nicest hat to make good impression on people. And the man said, sure, let me take it to the back of the store. He finds for him a very expensive hat. And when he looks in the mirror, he looks like $1 million. And the man pays for the hat and walk out the store. As soon as he walks out, someone greets him. Hi. Well, he says, the hat works. Yeah. Then he goes on the bus, and the bus driver greets him with a big smile, says, oh, come to my bus. I hope you'll have a good ride. While he's sitting, the guy sitting next to him, same story. He's greeting him and talking to him. Suddenly, people around him, he says to himself, the hat really makes magic. Everybody wants to talk to me. Everybody smiles. Everybody looks at me. He comes home. He sees his wife. He's greeting him with a nice smile. He's very happy. He's sure he got his money's worth. Suddenly the phone rings. Now this man, nobody bothered to talk to him for ages. Now people, when his kids answer the phone, he says, Dad, somebody is asking for you. He says to himself, look, not only people who see the hat already like me and want to socialize and smile, even people who are far and they don't see it, they sense already how happy I am because of my hat. And they call me. Now people need me. And he goes to the phone and he's told that the man on the other side is from the hat store, to let him know that he forgot the hat in the store. He should come back to pick it up. Placebo? I don't think it's placebo. I think it's much deeper. Yes, Heidi?
Yeah. He thought he was smiling. So outwardly, he was proud. So outwardly, he is smiling, he's engaging, and then
I wouldn't call it placebo. It's not the hat, it's the head. What as soon as he decided that he's a lucky man, as soon as he's decided that his look gives a nice impression, he received that. People really, there was no placebo here. It's a reality.
From the standpoint, when you take a placebo, you get better because you think it's, well,
you think, okay, so it's the same thing. Okay, I see your point. In other words, the placebo also works in your mind. It's not the pill that you're taking that has any magic. It's that your mind convinces you and it changes reality. Here we are talking about outside you, outside of you. Suddenly the bus driver and people sitting next to him and his wife, they all are greeting him with a smile because they like to see happy face. In other words, to be happy is not about watching comedy. To be happy is not about reading humor. To be happy is to have the happy attitude, to say, thank God I am around. Thank God I'm awakened. Thank God I'm able to live in this universe. And the rest will come. The happiness will create a better life. And that's the point the rabbi is going to make. So before we start reading the text, if I were to ask you, what's the benefit of joy in our life? Why do the rabbi chooses to spend so much time on joy? Why would you think, we know joy, living joyous life is very important. Everybody, so many products are there to make you happy, right? There's a huge market for that. Why is joy so important? Anybody can offer, yes.
It adds 5 years to your life.
It adds years, makes you live longer if you are happy.
Less sicknesses, no stress.
No
only
stress.
pluses.
In other words, joy takes away stress, takes away sicknesses. So it ends up living a better life, less visiting the doctor and longer life. Very good. Anybody else? Yes.
Have gratitude. So you're appreciative.
Joyful equals gratitude, you say? And therefore, why is it so important for life?
Well, to acknowledge and be grateful for the things that you have around you and for the people around you. Again, it's giving back because you're grateful, your gratitude, you're giving to somebody else as opposed to being inward.
So in other words, joy is very valuable because joy creates gratitude. And what you didn't say, but you mean to say is you are connected a lot deeper to your surrounding.
Yeah.
Because as you said it, when you're grateful for people in your surrounding, you are more aware of what they do for you and you're thankful, so you're going to get more. So in other words, to reciprocate, to have a two-way street in life, through joy, you are living it in a much greater way. Thank you. Any other reason? So I'm going to show it you a few other reasons. Ivan said that it's you live longer and healthier. Joy brings you health. Heidi mentioned gratitude creates a better communication with people. From the other perspective, on the same line, people enjoy your presence much more. People are happy people. The people that you are socialized with, if you're married or single, if you're a father or a child, it doesn't matter. You socialize. We are social human creatures. To socialize with people in a healthy way, we must have joy. That's what makes people enjoy our present. People are depressed and always sad. Nobody wants to be in the around them. But there is much more to it. The Rebbe points out that joy equals life. Life is joy. How do we know? In other words, the natural state of God's creation is to be joyous. How do I know? I know it from several ways, but one of them is if you look at a babe and an infant, a child, he continuously smiles unless he has a reason. He's bothered by something. Change my diaper, I'm hungry. Otherwise, they will be happy. A research shows that babies in the first 2 years of their life, they smile hundreds of times per day. As they grow, the numbers shrink. Adults smile tens of times. In other words, it's a double digit. couple of times, more than 10, but 20, 30 in the double digits. The babies who are still in the natural way God created them will smile hundreds of times per day. In other words, the way God created us, the machine that God created is born to be joyous so that it utilizes all its energy. We, unfortunately, during the day, find many excuses not to be joyous. Aching, complain, failing, I didn't reach my goal, I didn't make it on time, too much traffic, my car is already, there is a new model that came out, so my car is not the best one. There is many reasons to find, so the more you have, the more reasons you have not to be happy.
Because we try to show that we're in control.
Because we're trying to be in control. Very good. It's right on target. I think I shared with you that I met in Los Angeles. I don't know if I shared with you. I lived in LA and I walked to the Israeli communities. I met a bodyguard to one of the Israeli prime ministers. He moved to Los Angeles, started a business. And he always told me that he envies the Hasidim, people like me who are always happy. And he told me that he traveled with the Prime Minister of Israel to many, many countries across the globe. And once they traveled to Brazil, and for some reason he came to a section where people lived in tents, and he says there is monsoon season, where the rain that falls down, for someone who's not used to, they would get a heart attack. It's banging on the tent. He says every afternoon there would be monsoon would come in and water will seep through the roof of the tent, will flood their dwelling. Yet he said, I saw other places, I've been to palaces in Europe where the door handles are pure gold. And I guarantee you that those people living in a tent in Brazil were way, way happier than the people who live in those palaces with doorposts made of pure gold. Because sometimes not only possession and materialistic is not necessarily what makes a person happy, but sometimes it distracts somebody, because the more we have, the more in control we feel we are. And therefore, when things don't work our way, we get depressed. We're unhappy. How come it happens to me? But back to our discussion.
That nice car, you have this nice, big, fancy, expensive car, you think it's gonna make you happy,
But it doesn't, right? And then you feel that the next nice car will make you happy, and it's temporary. And then it starts becoming a cycle.
They say only 2 months.
Or less. So says the Rebbe explains that the natural way God created us, He created us to be joyous. That's the natural state of a human. And only when we grow, we start finding reasons, legitimate or illegitimate, doesn't matter, not to be happy. So if you want to live a healthy life, on the same line as Ivan is talking about, you need to know that part and parcel of living a good life is to live a happy life. In fact, in the Hasidic teachings, unhappiness equals death. Life, the word life, when I say life, I'm speaking about joy. Joy and life is the same, is interchange. How do I know? How do you say joy? Anybody? How do you say joy in Hebrew? Simcha. Huh? Simcha. So living with joy. Besimcha. Machshava. What is machshava? So thinking, brain thinking is the same letters as simcha. Machshava, besimcha are the same letters, except they are organized in different order.
Is it related to Chai?
Nothing to do with Chai. Chai is Chet Yud. There is no Yud in the Besimcha. That's Chet Hey. It's totally different. In other words, Simcha is something that is not external. Simcha is not only when I get married. Simcha is not only when I'm healthy. Simcha is not only when I get my car. Simcha is not only when I live in America. This has nothing to do with simcha. Besimcha, in joy, is machshava. Machshava, dibur, and maaseh. We talked about the three garments, right? One of them, machshava, is the brains. It's all to do in your brains. Just like the guy who bought the hat, he was sure it's the new hat that makes people appreciate him around, and he discovered it's all to do with his attitude. Joy, happiness, is from within and controlled by machshava, by our brains. Are there times where it's beyond our control? Of course. When someone suffered the loss of a close relative, the mitzvah is, God forbid, but the mitzvah is to mourn. Mourning is to be sad. There are times in the Jewish calendar, we're going to talk to either this lesson or next lesson, we're going to speak about the Jewish calendar. There are months which are unfortunate months that we need to express sadness. But we need to know it is temporary, because life equals joy. Did I make myself clear? This is what the rabbi is going to talk. Now, everything I shared with you until now is what we're going to call science or common sense. Life equals joy, longer life, healthier life. People want to socialize and be around you because you express gratitude. All that is good. But the reason the rabbi puts it in Tanya, the rabbi is not there to teach you science. The rabbi is not good. It's not another how to self-help book. The rabbi is talking about Torah, how to serve God. And the reason is the rabbi is going to share with us there is no way to serve God unless we have joy. The Hasidim say, Simcha is not a mitzvah. Sadness is not a sin. But Simcha can lead a man closer to God than any other mitzvah. Sadness can remove a man from God farther than any sin. In other words, the bedrock of this engagement from God is sadness. The bedrock for connection to God is simcha. I'm sure anybody who has enjoyed a healthy relationship with a spouse, with a child, it's all about joy. As soon as there is no joy, we call it dead. The relationship is dead. If there is no joy, you need to work on it. And anytime there is a reason, the reason is a side reason. It should not be the cause. That's the definition of love, but we're not going to get to it. We're going to go back to the service of God. The only way to serve God is with joy. Why? The Rebbe is going to use an example, we're going to read it soon, about two people who are fighting each other in the ring. What do you call it? Boxing.
Boxing.
In the boxing arena, you would think that the person who is stronger with bigger muscles and swift swings will win over the other guy who is not as strong. But the real truth is not. It is the one who is more energized, the one who is sure to be victorious. In other words, all of the march and all of the show that comes before, I'm going to win, I have to win, nobody can stand before me. In other words, the pep talk and all the preparation is as equal as the muscles themselves. Because the rabbi is going to tell you, if you put in the ring two men and one of them ate too much fatty food that slows him down, he might have big muscles. He might have done a lot of exercise, but he would be very slow to move. Once he's very slow, he's going to be on the bench. He's going to be put on the floor, because what you possess, the strength that you possess, needs to be utilized. It can only be utilized when you're vigor and strong with your will and desire to win. That's the reason that a lot of small armies can conquer very large armies. Guerrilla war, we call it in the modern day history. We call it the Jewish people fighting the world. How come the Maccabees, which are very small number of people, win victorious over the mightiest army? Because they knew they have no choice, and they knew that if they will fight with all their might, they will be victorious. And that's why you have a very small army. In the history of the world, it happens all the time. You have a huge, mighty army that is a little tired and slow to move, and comes a small guerrilla army that is very swift and says, we're going to fight because we're going to win, and they win. They actually become victorious. In other words, we need to understand it's not the energy, it's not the power or the training or the know-how, it's the vigor and the happiness and the joy that makes the person victorious. We discovered before that the Beinoni continuously is in facing a war. In order for him to win, he must be joyous. You remember there are two ways to win over the evil inclination. One is through the contemplation in the mind. We discovered that in length. The other one through the hidden love that exists with our heart that needs to be awakened. These are two methods the Rabbi was talking about in previous chapters. All that is great, only if we have the energy to fight. If we don't have energy, then we're going to lose. An example that's brought is the way that what do you call the animal that creates a web? A spider.
Spider.
How does a spider catch ants and flies? They create a web, and then a fly flies into it and get caught. Now, the spider is not going to go after the fly right away, because then he's going to be fighting a fly and he may lose. What does he do? He waits for the fly to get tired. He takes his time. He's patient. The fly got caught in the web, will try fighting it and releasing himself and wouldn't give up. What happens after a while? The fly gets so tired that he gives up. Once he gives up, it's an easy prey. In other words, the spider is not there to catch on the spot as soon as he can. He's going to wait for the fly, for the prey, to get so tired that he will not be able to resist. The evil inclination does the same as a spider. He creates a web. You are a loser. You will never be as good as your neighbor. You are, even though you're doing so well today, tomorrow you're going to fail anyway. It's called a web of negative thoughts. The reason he does it is to convince us that there is no chance of winning. There is no chance of doing the right thing. At that time, after we are convinced, then we don't even try. Why should I go to synagogue? Why should I keep kosher anyway? I'm going to go out for dinner. In other words, that's the trick of the evil inclination. There are so many stories to illustrate the point that over the discussion, I'm going to show you several stories. But the most important is to realize that no joy is the trick of the evil to convince us to be able to put us to the bench, to put us on the floor. In other words, I have the hidden love from God, and I can contemplate in my head why I should not sin. But if I don't have the energy and the vigor to stand for my right, to fight for it, I'm going to lose. The evil is like a spider which creates a web, creates many strands, and they are in the thoughts that go through my mind, that I'm unworthy. It's not going to affect anyway. It's only a one-time deal anyway, so you're never going to change. Why should you try so hard? Nobody else. In other words, convincing us to give up. Once he's successful, then he comes out, it's an open door, and he goes into us, convincing us to misbehave. Our strength is with joy. If we have joy, he wouldn't even try. As I said, there are so many stories. The third Chabad Rebbe, the Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek, once was asked, what did the Hasidic teaching did over those who observe God without Hasidic teaching? And he answered that we serve God with joy, and therefore it makes us more observant, and no one can dispute that. In other words, joy is a prerequisite to have a serious relationship with God. If I have no joy, for whatever reason, don't expect to have a good relationship with God and obey God's commandments. And now, after having said that, we can see it in the text. The Rebbe, as I said, in this chapter is going to deal with the three levels. One is joy. Why joy? Then what happens to sadness and bitterness? And then what happens to joy that comes after sadness? So I'm starting at chapter 26. Yes.
Question, so there's a month that you're sad.
We're going to talk about months. Okay.
I'm saying that's not a negative sadness though, right? It doesn't affect you in a negative way?
It's sadness. What
I
do you
understand,
mean?
but again, there's sadness that puts you in depression and kind of, fades you away versus a purposeful sadness that temporary and then you're back.
We'll find out. There are periods where sadness is just almost void of life. There are times when someone faces the loss of somebody close to them, that the Torah dictates that they must mourn. It's a moment we're not allowed to study Torah or do the mitzvot. Are you familiar with that? Not the negative commandment, but positive commandments they cannot do until after burial. Even after burial, they're not allowed to study Torah. They're not allowed to celebrate, even if it's serving God. Shabbos they must, because it's all negative. The negative prohibition. They're not allowed to eat non-kosher, but they don't make a blessing when they eat kosher. Okay, so the positive is removed from them. So there are times where sadness is given. As the rabbi will talk about, there are times, specific designated time for sadness. Because if there is no sadness, it creates a hooligan lifestyle. There is no accounting. And then I can do whatever I want and still be happy. And it's not acceptable.
Part of it's crying.
Just crying is not sadness. Crying is regret. So, but there are periods where sadness is appropriate. The rabbi, we're going to talk about. However, I need you to understand the rabbi is dedicating 9 chapters to joy, not because joy equals life. A child, a baby is all joyous. Not because joy equals longevity and less time spent at doctors. Not because life create a surrounding that's much happier and much more people want to socialize. Simply because to serve God, you cannot start unless you have joy.
And Jacob is a good example.
The what?
When Joseph was sold to Egypt for 20 years, God didn't speak to him. And as soon as he heard the news that his Joseph was alive, he became joyous.
Oh, Yaakov.
Yaakov.
Was not speaking to him. Okay, yes. And there are many other examples. I'm reading on page 351. In the previous chapter, the Alter Rebbe explained how it is very near to you, that is, how it is very easy and accessible to every Jew to serve God with love and awe. He stated that this can be accomplished either by creating a love and fear of God through meditation on God's greatness, or by arousing the hidden love, which also comprises a fear of God, inherent in every Jew. These are the 2 types of way to serve God and stay away from sin. In the coming chapters, the Alter Rebbe will discuss means of overcoming possible obstacles in the path of one's service to God. In the first instance, he shows how one may overcome the sadness and dullness of heart, whereby the heart becomes insensitive to feelings of love and fear of God, distancing themselves from God through sadness. Says the Rebbe, but this must be made known as a cardinal principle. In other words, it's not just important, but it is the foundation. It is with the service of God just as it is with a victory over a physical opponent. For instance, two people who wrestle with each other, each striving to fell the other. If one of them is lazy and sluggish, he will easily be defeated and will fall, even if he be stronger than the other, since his laziness and sluggishness prevent him from revealing his strength. Do we need explanation about wrestling? If you're sluggish or lazy, there is no chance you will overcome your opponent. Even though your opponent is half your size, even though the opponent is half your might, he's going to take over. Because if you're sluggish, you're going to take your time before you punch, and the other guy already is going to punch you a few times. Similarly, with the conquest of one's evil nature, despite the fact that the good nature is stronger than the evil, for as explained in previous chapters, even a little of the light of holiness dispels much darkness of the klippah, yet here too the previous rule applies, and thus it is impossible to conquer the evil nature with laziness and sluggishness, which stem from sadness and stone-like dullness of the heart. If you have what do you call it? Stone-like dullness, heaviness of the heart, because you're sad, you will not be able to serve God. You will not be able to overcome the challenges. But rather with alacrity, which derives from joy and an open, that is, responsive heart that is unblemished by any trace of worry and sadness in the world. So the best way to start the day and end the day is with great joy. Despite all the challenges, regardless of what we have or not, or our plans, or what we were dealt with, joy is the only way to serve God, and there has to be a complete joy continuously every moment of life. As for the now the Rabbi is going to talk about that sadness is part of life. So this is the first thing. The Rabbi is going to go into many, many details to show how vital and how we apply it. I just want to show it you a few points. The Tzemach Tzedek, the third Chabad Rebbe, lived in Russia. The Tsar, at the time, they would steal Jewish babies to raise them into a faithful soldiers. They are known as the Cantonistim. I don't know the translation in English. Cantonistim, a term for men who were ripped off their families at a young age. The Tsar would send people and hire them and pay them to bring 1,000 children. Those children were between the age of 7 and 9, I believe. They were stolen, literally stolen in the streets. 2 or 3 men would come into a village and grab 10 kids. Then they'll go to another village and they'll bring those kids, and they would go through training of like 5 years. During those training, they had to let go of parents and emotions and where they come from, the religion, and just to be faithful soldiers. They were very, very strong soldiers. They were very brave soldiers later on. The Jewish children, many of them were taken back. A lot of people would be going into those ranks and steal them back and take them back. But a lot of them remained. There was a synagogue in St. Petersburg, and in other places in Russia, it's called the Cantonistim synagogue. And even after, I believe for years, when synagogues were closed, those synagogues had a special permit to remain open because they were previously soldiers. Therefore, they enjoy great benefits from the Russian authorities. The Cantonistim, part of their training is to let go of any religion. But the Jewish children, it happened all over Russia. The Jewish children remained steadfast. Most of them knew nothing because no one is going to teach them. The little they knew, they kept. And when they were released at the age of 32, I think they served like 19 years in the army, something like that. And when they were released, they would go back. Sometimes, most of the times, they wouldn't even know which families they belonged to. So they would remain single for the rest of their life. They wouldn't marry. because they didn't know how to cope with somebody else, to share a life with somebody else. But many of them knew enough that they're Jewish, and there is Yom Kippur, there is Rosh Hashanah, there is a holiday of Passover, and they would share and keep it within themselves. Some of them refused to eat non-kosher, and there's many stories that they got killed or they jumped to the river because they did not want to, because they were smart enough to know it's against the Jewish tradition, and therefore they're not going to give up on the tradition. There are many, many stories of the Cantonists. There was this happened about 200 years ago. There was a Rebbe, that third Rebbe came to St. Petersburg there was a time that they were trying to force the Jewish schools to teach secular studies and language, and the Rebbe was very much against that. And he was there as a representative of Jewish people. He was invited to a synagogue of the Cantonists to speak. They had a synagogue there. When he came, one of the locals who was representing the entire group, turned to the Rebbe and he said, Rebbe, we sweep the floor of the synagogue, so to say, you put the red carpet, there was no red carpet, but to sweep the floors, clean the walls, and even polish the buttons, the buttons of our jackets. The Tsar's army, they were known to have there is a phrase in Russia that even the buttons are polished. In other words, they're ready for war completely. So they said we even polished our buttons in your honor. Now we want you to polish our souls, cleanse our souls, because there were 30 years of their life, 25 years of their life was taken from them against their will. So it's not their fault for what they do, because they don't know much. And they asked the Rebbe to bless them and help them reconnect. The Rebbe turned to them and he said, to polish your buttons, you need two components, water and sand. Those days, I think the chemicals to polish was sand. Maybe like you have today sandpaper or whatever sand, or some type of sand.
Silica. Yeah.
Huh? What do you say, Dick?
Silica.
Silica? Thank you. So it's the Rebbe's turn to him and to them and says, just like in physical buttons, so are the spiritual soul need sand and water. The sand is the prayers when you pray, and the water are the tears that you cry out to God to accept you. So one of the soldiers turned to the Rebbe and he says, Rebbe, we learned in the army that the only way to conquer our enemy is with a march, with joy. And that's why you have a band. That's why you have a band in front of the army when they go to battle, to invigorate, to put energy into the soldiers. And the Rebbe turned to him and says, I like it very much. You're right. No need for tears to serve God. It's all about joy. The Hasidim say that after that, the Rebbe changed his entire attitude. He was very depressed with the situation that he was facing, the challenges in St. Petersburg with the Russian authorities. And when he came back, all he was preaching is about joy, because the only way to conquer your enemy is with joy. So that's what we're talking about here. Let's continue. You know what? Let's talk about the cycle, the year. Is the Jewish calendar a happy calendar, a sad calendar? None of the above, little of each. I would like to very happy. Thank you. Just a minute. Are you comparing it to other calendars?
There's so many holidays and things to be joyful for.
A lot of holidays in the Jewish calendar to be happy. Thank you. Once a week. Okay, good answer. Anybody else? So there are a lot of happy days. All the holidays are time of joy. In fact, we have a holiday called the holiday of Sukkot, which the Torah calls it the season of joy, the time of joy. We have a day called Simchat Torah, to celebrate and rejoice with the Torah. Most of the holidays are very happy holidays. However, it's not always the case. You have a month of very serious month. Anybody can guess which month is considered a serious month? Av, Tishrei. Av is a sad month. I was about to get there. Av is a very sad month. You have 3 weeks preceding that month, 2 weeks, a week and a half prior, and the 9 days of Av are very sad. We don't get married, we don't celebrate, we don't buy new clothes, we don't go on vacations, etc. Tishrei, the month we are about to celebrate, beginning with Rosh Hashanah, is a very serious time. It's a day of judgment. It's a day of atonement. We fast. It's not such a happy time. Then we have a month of great joy, which is the month of Adar, the month in the month of Purim. The entire month is a happy month. In general, the Jewish calendar is a very happy calendar. However, there are periods where sadness overtakes the month. You know what's so interesting is that after each occasion of sadness, it brings greater joy. For example, Av, you have the 9 days, 3 weeks. After the 9 days, what happens? You reach the day of 15 of Av. You know what 15 of Av is? No day was as happy as the 15 of Av. That's what the Talmud tells us. 15 of Av is Valentine's, Jewish Valentine. More marriages were taking place on 15 of Av. It's a very happy holiday. It starts in biblical time. The Talmud, in other words, and that's the next topic the Rabbi is going to talk about, from sadness, the deeper you go, it is for the for a much greater joy. So Tishrei, the month of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, what happened after Yom Kippur? You had 15 days of sadness, not sadness, seriousness. You get to Sukkot. Sukkot is the holiday of Simcha, joy. In other words, if you have a day of sadness, you will get a day of great joy after that. If you have a season of seriousness, you will get a season of many, many joyous occasions. That's why you get to Sukkot, and the pinnacle is Simchat Torah, which is much greater. In other words, yes. Right. You have 60 days of joy. You have 60 days of joy. You have much more joy. In other words, the Jewish calendar is joy because life is joy. But then we stop at different holidays and rejoice with God for different reasons. Hanukkah is because of one miracle, Purim for another, Passover for another miracle, each one. But what happens when we do have seasons or we have periods, a day, a period of seriousness when the joy has no place? On Rosh Hashanah, we don't say Hallel, even though it's Rosh Chodesh. It's the only exception. You don't say the prayer of Hallel, praising God, because it's a serious day. It's inappropriate to rejoice on Rosh Hashanah. But we will end up after with a period of joy. In other words, it's a preparation for a greater joy. That's the point the Rabbi is going to make.
And month of Elul is preparation for those 2 months, right?
For that month, yes. So let's try to get a little more. As for the verse, I'm in the middle on page 352. As for the verse in every sadness, as for the verse in every sadness, there will be profit, which means that some profit and advantage would be derived from it. Just pay attention that the word, this is in Proverbs, I believe. Yeah, it's in Proverbs. In every sadness, there will be, not there is. Yeah, means in the future. Sadness on its own is no good, period. No exception. Sadness in itself will bring in the future better, good, happiness. So there is it is appropriate for sadness at some occasions, some dates, some situations, but realize it's not good for itself. It's only to bring something else later, just like operation or taking antibiotics or taking medicine. Medicine itself is no good. It's poison, but it will cure. It will make you better tomorrow. When someone is getting operated, they cut your body. It's not healthy. It's not good. There is no good in the act itself. The good is the outcome that will be after. And that's why Proverbs says that in every sadness, there will be profit you will benefit from in the future, not in the sadness itself. So again, sadness on its own has no good whatsoever. Sadness in a certain times or certain events will cause the person to benefit greatly. And that's what the rabbi is going to say. The wording, there will be profit, implies that on the contrary, the sadness itself is no virtue, except that some profit will ultimately be derived from it in the future. The profit is the true joy in God, which follows the true, that is, justified sadness over one's sins, with bitterness of the soul and a broken heart, which must come at specific suitable times. And the rabbi is going to talk about the suitable times or specific.
This is good. Sometimes it's good.
In other words, sadness on its own can only bring profit in the future, can have a good results, just like an operation can bring a good result, but provided it's done for a purpose, for a good reason. And that good reason must come only at specific periods, specific times. Says the Rebbe, why should this sadness lead to the worshipper to joy? For thereby, I'm sorry, I skipped. This profit is the true joy of God in God, which follows the truth that is justified. I read it. I'm continuing on page 353. Why should the sadness lead to worshipper to joy? For thereby, through one sadness, the spirit of impurity and of the Sitra Achra is broken, and so too the iron wall that separates him from his Father in heaven will be broken. As the Zohar comments on the verse, a broken spirit, a broken heart, you will not despise. What the rabbi is explaining is that the Zohar tells us that sometimes we need to have a broken heart in order for us to connect to God. And the broken heart comes through great sadness. Whereas the rabbi is going to talk about sadness about our distance from God. And that will create a much stronger bond. Just like an operation. Sometimes we need to remove the growth. We need to fix something. But that's not the operation itself. It's the outcome from the operation. That's at specific times. So sadness does have a room at specific times for specific reasons, as we will be discussing in next week's lesson. Yes.
And I read this from the Rabbi, which sort of sums up what you just said, that I really like. The sadness, the saying, opening up the gates of heaven with tears.
Yes.
But it said, but joy disintegrates.
The gates, right. And so,
one thing can open, but I guess the joy connects you even more.
and there are so many stories to point out, and God willing, next week I'll show more stories. I just want to make sure that you understand that the idea of sadness does exist within the service of God, but it has to be for specific events at specific times and limited to that. And there is no direct benefit from sadness, but it will lead to greater joy, to a stronger bond, and therefore it is part of our human nature. And we'll continue next week, God willing. Be well, everybody. Good night.
Rabbi, is there a book of the story that you told us regarding
The Cantonese team?
Yeah.
There are so many